So hi, everyone. So I was thinking to start straight to the point and talk about on how it all started, with the whole 3D. So several years ago, like 2016, 17, I got a job as a fashion designer, traditional fashion designer in Denmark for Only, bestseller. So a lot of you probably heard about the brand. And I also got an opportunity, So I also got an opportunity to go to suppliers for 6 months in China and see how does production works, to see manufacturing. On the same trip, I was told about 3D. One of the suppliers, they use 3D. And they said to me, we are using a 3D software program called Cloud 3D. And I was thinking, what is that? What is Cloud 3D? And they told me a little bit about it. They're saving samples and stuff. It sounded like a dream kind of thing scenario. And I was very skeptical about it. Very judgmental. I was thinking this will never work. Nobody's going to work in 3D. Why would you work in 3D? We have our Illustrator. We are sketching. We are so fine. We don't need this. On the same trip, I tried 3D for 3 days. So I had an opportunity to try it and really go deep into it. And after 3 days, I was like a new person. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I have ever tried. And I was thinking I can't believe this can really work for saving samples. What if we create things in 3D or certain collections in 3D and we make a decision and then we produce? When I was back in Denmark, later on, I got a job as a 3D designer and I was working on some 3D collections. But today, it's been 4 years approximately. I have my own digital agency, 3DKN, and I work with brands such as Marks & Spencer, Reigns, DK Company, Villa by Bestseller, and many more, creating digital assets. And I also have a fashion brand that I just opened calling LORA LEGARTH, with very different infrastructure using 3D. So I will say what are the benefits of 3D? Of course, there are a lot of benefits of 3D, but we can't talk about each of it. So I decided to talk about 3 maybe main points, let's call it like that. So the first one is smart decisions made early, and I will go into that and say what I mean by that. The second one is e-commerce, and the third, market and product experience as well. So we're going to go into each of it and, just to have a look on what I mean when I say this. So when it comes to LORA LEGARTH, smart decision made early. So that means that imagine instead of producing everything, imagine you have to start your own brand. Let's start it like that. So if you will start your own brand like everyone else is starting your brand, the brand today, it will be you contact suppliers, you give them some sketch, maybe some measurements if you have it, probably not if you don't have it, you will ask them to make for you. You will just come up with some pictures and say okay, can you make the styles for me? They'll make styles for you, and then you will usually have several prototypes. And after several prototypes, you will maybe make decision to have the styles and go, and have a couple of photo shooting samples, a lot of salesman samples maybe, and then you will go to production. So in reality, you'll have a lot of different samples. The way big brands are working, they have a lot of samples, as you may know, right? So it's sketch, sample, prototype, then you have salesman sample, production sample, photo shooting sample before that. So there are a lot of samples that you constantly have. So what I decided to do with LORA LEGARTH, I decided to make things in 3D first, generate all the measurements and everything from 3D, send to suppliers, make a prototype, which should be fairly good if the measurements are correct, right? And the patterns are good, and then go to production straight away. So I didn't have any samples in between. This not only saved me time, but also saved me money as well. Another thing where you can use 3D, or where I used 3D, was also for e-commerce for my own brand. So some of the stuff that you see here, they are real models, real photo shooting, and some of them are made in 3D, so CGI models. So the first model is CGI, for example, and the second one is a real one. So I went all the way from 3D technically to e-commerce straight away, right? And this is something similar, I would say, I did for Saint-Tropez by DK Company. It's a brand. So what happened with them, for example? So they had a style. They made the style. We made the style in 3D first, the collection. And we also decided, okay, So they don't have sample in the office arrived yet, so it's late. So what can we do about that? We decided to use 3D. I mean, they decided to use 3D all the way through and post it on e-commerce. So that means you start selling before you even have the sample in-house, if that makes sense. So you sell from 3D. So if you make a really good render image, if you make a really good sample, you can go straight away to e-commerce and try to sell from there instead. I think they still have this dress online. So if you go to Central Pay, then you can have a look at some styles they're made in 3D only. We also did a lookbook, and we can call it also kind of like an overview for a sales team. So again, before producing a collection, what they decided to do is to use 3D and introduce like 20 styles, approximately maybe 30, to sales team. So those styles were not made in physical world, they were made only digitally. And some of those styles were, of course, news products. I don't know if you say news, so I don't know if this is Danish word, but never out of stock. Which means that if you have a never out of stock style, so you can introduce one physical sample, let's say, and the rest of the colorways, prints you can have in 3D. And you can introduce that to sales team. And their sales team was able to pick and choose style and say, I want this one, can we produce that? I don't want this one, it's out. So again, you don't have physical samples. Maybe some styles you do have a physical sample if it's coming from suppliers, but the colorway, the texture and everything will be in 3D. I did a very similar thing for my own brand, LORA LEGARTH. So what I did, actually, I made a lineup. I'm showing only few styles here. What I did, again, like, because I am a pretty visual person, like a lot of you are, I assume if you work in fashion, of course, or in general, like with photo shooting or 3D or whatever you're working with, so creative jobs. So I had to see collection first, how it will look like in digitally before I produce physically anything, like production-wise. So I made a lineup, and this is like made with, everything is in 3D, and the models, they're made in 3D CGI, but a little bit enhanced faces with AI. I know this doesn't look perfectly, you can probably tell this is not real 100%, but the point was here, okay, can I make a decision based on what I see here? Can I say, yes, I want this color, I want this collection, I want this style? If I can, that's good enough for me to keep going and say, okay, that's what I want. This is, again, example as well, how can you do 3D without a model? So, because the question is always like, how does the model look real or not real? How real it is? Is it too digital? It's not too digital, and so on. So you can also post, or what I did, I post like also just 3D garment without a model. I think it's pretty clear. You can see like how it looks, and for social media as well. But when it comes to marketing and product experience, the story is a little bit different, I would say, because when you do something for e-commerce, usually, it doesn't have to be, but it's a bit more commercial, I would say. Not for every brand, depending on what kind of brand you are. But for marketing and product experience, this is where you can be a little bit more creative. So one of the samples, for example, that I did again for my own brand is LORA LEGARTH. And this is where we can talk about diversity a bit. Because I had a model, real model, very Scandinavian looking, because the brand is Scandinavian as well. And that's kind of like fine. But if I want to introduce more models and I want to save a little bit more money, a little bit more time, and I also want to be able to use those pictures forever, so to say, and not like for 1 or 2 years, like how much you can use, you have to with if you work with agencies. So then I decided to create also 3D models. So this model is CGI, purely CGI, and even if it looks a little bit digital, I didn't mind. I was thinking, you know what, but that's my brand. Like I can make it like a little bit more digital, like a first image. Like, why not? I think this is the creative part of it as well. It still looks clean, it doesn't have, it's not, nothing crazy here, like pretty settled. But again, like it's a little bit more authentic, I would say. This is an example that I did for Bugner. Bugner is a German brand, a luxury. And they already have this jacket running for many years. And they decided, okay, like what if we use this jacket, we created a digital space, and we create a digital space as well. So we do a little bit different just to see how it will look like. Again, for the product experience. And this is what we did. And I believe it ended up looking pretty good for the jacket that they have with a lot of details. We did everything they wanted, high quality. We also make videos as well. I don't have video here, but I can show you those images. And another thing that I was a part of as well, which I think is super cool, there is a brand, you probably all heard about, Reigns in Denmark. It's absolutely amazing brand. They create cool stuff. They do CGI, they create 3D things. It's all about marketing product experience. And I absolutely love the brand. And I had an opportunity to work with them as well, with some other teams as well. And we made a video like together, and products and video. And I want to show you, I don't know if there is a sound. Let me have a look. But I want you to see this if you already didn't see it. This is all 3D.
Introducing Homeway, a new collection from Reigns. Engineered for functionality. Purpose-built to enhance connection with nature. Harmony between indoor and outdoor.
Yeah. So this is another way of doing it. So it's not all about samples, which maybe if you're not from design team, maybe it sounds a bit boring, like samples, like who cares about that? But this is cool, at least. You know, this is like something fun that you can do with the 3D, which I believe is like absolutely amazing, you know, to just make your brand a little bit different from the others, at least. And another thing that I wanted to introduce as well is that workwear. So it doesn't have to be fashion. 3D could be workwear, 3D could be accessories, 3D could be diapers, 3D could be like anything. Like it doesn't have to be specifically fashion, but you can make it a little bit more fashionable. So if you decide to make workwear, if you're coming from that kind of company, so then you can introduce a little bit more different lights, you know, different poses, so you can make it a bit more fashionable, a bit more appealing, I would say. And then I wanted to show you like something that I made, you know, just to show that you can also be creative, you know, you can go like a little bit more crazy. So why being commercial? You can also try to do something a little bit more experimental. So this is just to show that you can do it if you want to. Again, another great reason of using 3D is also this. But what is important to keep in mind when implementing 3D? So of course, implementation of 3D is a whole new story. And we can talk about that for years and ages, you know, like it's a very difficult thing to do. And every brand who started with 3D in any department know how difficult this can be. But I will talk about like just a few things that I believe from my experience working with brands are important to keep in mind at least. So I divided into kind of 3 piles. So one of them is collaboration. So it doesn't matter if you're in a small brand or if you're in a big brand. If you you know, depends first, where do you want to implement 3D? Is it in marketing? Is it in design? You know, like which department you want to start with. Brands are starting in different departments. Some of them do only marketing, CGI, cool stuff. Some of them want to cut salesman samples. So it's very different from brand to brand. But what is important to keep in mind is that even if you start in design and later on you want to, you know, show to salespeople or you want to kind of go to marketing or e-commerce, you need to build collaboration with them. It's very important. You know, you need to involve those people. So if you implement 3D in design, I mean, they also need to have their opinion about it. They have to be involved because that's kind of the only way to make it work almost. I mean, if someone else make it work, you know, without involving other people, that's amazing. But usually people have to be involved, different departments, because you need to know what are their needs and how you can introduce to them. And people have to get used to it. That's another thing. Basic library. That's so important. I really want to talk about that. So as someone who is super practical, like I like things, you know, simple, efficient, you know, like I don't want to spend too much time on certain things, like even if we can make it kind of like easy to work. I don't know how to explain. That's the best. And one of the things that works the best is having basic library. So when it comes to 3D, you have to storage assets. You need to have assets. You need to have pre-made stuff. You know, very often you will hear, and I hear that all the time from the clients, okay, if it's a good quality, that means that I need a lot of time. Yes and no. If you have a good library, if you have pre-made library, if you have a huge library, then you don't need the same amount of time as if you start from scratch. You don't start from scratch. With 3D, there is no reason to start from scratch. You have patterns stored, you have lights, you have studios, you have all of this stored, and then you just switch off and on lights. You just, you know, use what you have. Texture, fabric library, all of this. It takes time to build a library, but once you have it, then you can be much more efficient. And I'm 100% sure about that. Having the right sources, meaning having the right people. Sometimes when people want to implement 3D, those right people are just in front of you. They're in the company. And usually I always say those are the people who really want to implement 3D. They want change. They want something new, like you can recognize those people for sure. And sometimes if you don't have those people in the company, you have to find them. So maybe they're in another company. You have to steal them. Or maybe they're like agencies, or freelancers. So, but finding the right people is also key to start with 3D for sure. Getting the right informations. And what kinds of software programs are available in the market? So I will show you a couple. I like to divide them. Like one is the garment software, like that we have, and then we have creative software. The reason why I like to divide them is because sometimes what you create in garment software, you don't have to use the same software to render beautiful images, make videos. Sometimes you have to use some other software program. So you probably heard about Cloud 3D or CLO, someone calls, Marvelous Designer, Browser, Style 3D, name it. There are like a couple of them at the marketplace. And which one is the best to use depends on the company. Again, the company, the size of the company, how you want to use it, where you want to use it. Each of them has, their pros and cons, so to say. And when it comes to creative software programs, so this is like, I would say that all three of them are pretty good. Cinema 4D, you heard about it, probably Blender, very popular, it's free as well. Keyshot, really good. So if you want to showcase and use like, make cool videos again and stuff, then you can use those videos as a second one. Very often I render only in Cloud 3D, and honestly, sometimes people don't believe me. They say this is impossible to render good quality in Cloud 3D. It is possible. If you set up the right lights, the right studio, you can render good quality in Cloud 3D. And sometimes that's enough. You don't need to have any other software program. And how do you start? Yeah. For me, again, I'll go back to the thing that I mentioned before, finding the right people. And sometimes the right people, they don't always need to have experience and proven track record, because if those people are in the company and they're willing to start, you can train them. But sometimes if people, you don't want to train people, you want to have, consultations or, like outside or agency, then they need to have experience and some proven track record so that okay, did you do this before? Or what did you do for other brands? It's a good question to ask, for example. And I think, one more not to forget. After all, what is real? I have like a small quiz kind of thing. I don't know if you can call it quiz. But I want you to ask, what do you think, which image is real and which one is 3D? If anyone can tell me. The first one, what do you think? Anyone? Some people are kind of real 3D. So technically, first one real, second 3D, third real, and fourth 3D. So that's the thing. You can make them looking as real as possible and kind of be in doubt. I think that's a good thing, to be in doubt, at least from my perspective. If you're in doubt, then probably they're kind of on a good way, so to say. And I think that's it. I don't know if I was too fast, but okay, perfect. And now, we have a questions, right? Thanks.
Is there any standard libraries that you would buy to get started instead of creating everything yourself from scratch?
So now it depends which libraries we're talking about. Are we talking about garments, like 2D patterns? Are we talking about studios? Are we talking about textures? For example, I can give for textures. There is a great Adobe. It's called Substance Source. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I guess I do. Substance Source. I don't know if you heard about it. They have a huge texture library, and it's absolutely amazing. Clo itself has also a pre-made texture, which is also good, and you can improve it a little bit in Photoshop. When it comes to 2D patterns, that's depend on the brands. Usually, you have to make a lot of things by yourself when it comes to 2D, but you can also use maybe suppliers and have 2D patterns divided by suppliers, for example, just to give.
Okay, good. Then we move on to the next one here. How long does it take to build that basic library of different garments, lights, studios, etc.?
Again, depend on the company, team, like how big it is, decision making and stuff like that. But it can take up to a year sometimes. Some brands take a long time to build it. But once they build it, then it takes easier. So sometimes you have to spend more time and be slow at the beginning so to be able to be fast later, if that makes sense. Having strategy and everything in place.
So that's the initial investment you need to make.
Yeah, I would say so.
Good. I'll go to the second one from the top. Is it difficult to create convincing movement in the garments in 3D? Because I think 3D, we've seen a lot like furniture, stuff like that. But a garment is a different thing, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say necessarily it's difficult because, again, you have to, when you work in 3D a lot for many years, then naturally you're getting better and better and better. And some years you become really good in it, so you can mimic almost any physical and texture shape. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it takes time, especially if you're starting, for sure, to learn how to do it.
Good. Top one here. Do you tell your customers the imagery is 3D? I guess they come to you for exactly that, right?
Yes. When it comes to agency 3D can, then people come for 3D assets. But if we talk about my own brand, LORA LEGARTH, I don't have any reason not to say this is 3D. If the image is 3D, it's 3D. So that's how it is.
Okay. And back to Kelsey's presentation earlier on today, how do you label this on your website?
I would say this is made 3D. Like, this is coming from 3D. And I will say exactly the reason why I use it or how I use it in 3D in my company. That's how I'll explain.
Okay.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't know, yeah.
Good. Then, again, second one from the top. Which skills do you think someone should have to master 3D in fashion and content creation?
I would say start with one program first. For example, if you want to make garments, start with Clothes 3D, Browser, Style 3D. Choose one. Don't jump into this one and that one, because they all have different layout. They work in a similar principle, but different layout. Choose the one that suits you the best and go for it, and just use that one, let's say for a year maybe, just that software program, and then later on you can experiment once you become better and faster. The more you use it, you will naturally become more efficient. No doubt about that, if you use it often, for sure.
Good. Then the top one, if we take our model shop photo in with a garment, right? How much refinement is needed after the render to get to the desired result?
Refinement in a way like changes? Or?
And I believe to make the small details the exact way you want it. Would you go through iterations there?
Yeah, you would. I mean, I have rule in my company the agency that it's fine, that I never had problem with that. Usually I have 3 rounds of changes, and it's absolutely enough because the first round is already pretty good, I would say. And then all the second small changes in details are usually very small, if that makes sense.
Okay. Good. Then I'll jump to the second one from the top again. How long does it take to create a single 3D model shot of the standard needed for a PDP?
So this is where we have to talk about, of course, the quality and who you want to present, right? If we talk about presenting in design team, sometimes when you present things in design team, you don't need extraordinary crazy quality, because designers are very good in making decisions on what they see in 3D without even being rendered. But if you show to sales, that's a different story. So if you, let's say if you have pre-made library and everything, you can make you need 15 minutes or whatever to make half an hour. But if you have to show to sales, you need maybe an hour or two, depending on the garment as well. Now I'm saying on top of my head, but depends what it is.
Okay, good. I'll go to the second one again from the top. You've shown some good examples here of the 3D use, but are there any instances where you've been struggling to make 3D work well and where you wouldn't recommend it?
At the very beginning, I would say knitwear was a challenge, texture. Knitwear was a challenge in texturing, but recently Clothes 3D improved that. At the very beginning it was very flat, and now they're making it looking 3D. The only problem with that at the moment with Clothes 3D, as I mainly work in Clothes 3D, is you need very good rendering engine. So to say graphics card and stuff to support that, it's a bit heavy, but it's getting better, and that's a good thing. It's improving.
And then if we go to the top one, how long does it take to create 3D image of products? You touched a little on it.
Yeah. From 50 minutes to 3 hours, depending on what it is.
Depends.
All depends.
Yeah. Good. second one from the top again. How do you overcome that all-time habit of feeling that physical fabrics before production if you use... Where'd that go? 3D creation is it now. It's the second one from the bottom I can see. Yeah. How do you overcome that all-time habit of feeling the physical fabrics before production if you use 3D?
That's actually a very good question, because that's at the very beginning, of course, I was kind of missing. I was like, you missed that 3D touch. But once you get into the stage where you can make it so realistic, you get satisfaction out of it. I don't know how to explain, but that's the best way to explain, I think. You get such a good satisfaction that you can create such a realistic thing. And that satisfaction is enough for you that you don't need physical product, because this is becoming physical for you because it's so good, if that makes sense.
Okay, good. One last question for you. That is, you talked a bit about rendering here. The last one down, are you using a cloud render solution, or are you working locally when it comes to rendering?
Because my projects are not that huge, so that I need a cloud render. But if they will be big, then I would need a cloud render. Otherwise, I'm locally rendering. I have one computer where I work, one computer that I render. And then that's how I work.
Okay, perfect, good.
Same with other freelancers.
Thank you.